My name's Jane Ansell. I'm the Chief Executive of Sleep Scotland, and this is my colleague Emma Vinnie, who's, amongst other things, the coordinator of most of our sleep counsellors. So today you can see it's called a sleep awareness workshop, and just to go over the aims of today, but I think with enough flexibility that if people interrupt me, gladly do, ask questions, contribute, it's a good number to make it as interactive and as informal as possible. So I'm hoping by the end of this you have a basic understanding of sleep, you have an awareness of the sleep problems that children face and the importance of actually why we need to do something about those sleep problems. And the sort of third thing, which I think we can do in a session, is introduce you to what we call sleep hygiene and bedtime routines. And hygiene's really an American word, but I call it almost the first level of dealing with sleep problems. And I'm assuming you're all teachers, am I right? Or in education? No? No? Can I just ask, just for a minute, will you just say what you are? Just shout out. If you don't mind, I don't know your names. If you do want me to call you by your names, which I'd be delighted to, get one of those sheets of paper and write in very large letters just your first name. But can I just get an idea who I'm speaking to? What's your area?
Homeschool coordinator.
Oh.
Work with children in school. And
Yeah, no, I know homeschool's we train a lot of them to be sleep counsellors. And yourself?
Speech and language therapist.
All right.
I work in education and in adult services.
Okay.
Head of care in a small, independent, autism-specific residential and day school.
Right, so we've got quite a variety. Yourself?
I'm a project coordinator
In
for
those on the autistic spectrum?
children on the autistic
Yeah,
spectrum.
perfect, perfect, okay. And the lady who's just walked in, who's going to take herself a comfy seat.
I'm an education advisor with a virtual school for children in care, and I work mainly with children in care who have disabilities, and the vast majority of them have autism and probably other
Okay. Okay, I'm really curious. Usually if you say a virtual usually if people say virtual, they mean it's on the net or something like that. Is that right?
Yes, it's a national concept the government have brought in. It's the idea that as a city council, all your looked after children wherever they are, you have them as part of what they call it a virtual school, so that the head of our virtual school is as responsible for their progress and welfare in school as the head teacher of their actual school where they attend every day.
Right. It's always very interesting when you come to these conferences. It's really worth me asking people because I learn all sorts of things.
It's to do with the fact that the idea of bringing children into care is to improve their quality of life.
Course.
But even despite decades of intervention, when children come into care, generally their achievement in school goes down.
Yeah.
So it's about there's just more and more responsibility put on the councils basically to try and address that.
Okay, excellent. Yourself?
We're both
Thank you.
autism outreach people.
Okay. You both being you both. Lovely, thank you.
I'm an outreach coordinator based at a special school in Wolverhampton, and the school is specifically for children with autism.
Okay. Should we start yourself?
I'm nothing really.
I'm sure you're something.
I'm retired. But I still do a bit of training.
Yeah, and which geographical area do you live in then?
I live in Bury St Edmunds.
Right.
I used to be at Birmingham University, and I'm still emeritus professor there.
Of course, I recognise you now. I didn't know you'd retired. Officially, I'm sure you're doing masses. Yeah, no, it's good to have you with us.
I work with the Early Support Service in Birmingham. I'm a teacher with them. And I work at home with preschoolers,
Okay.
a lot of whom have autism, and also in a child development centre as part of a multidisciplinary team involved in diagnosis.
Lovely.
I'm a learning mentor at the Early Intervention Service in Warwickshire.
Right.
And primarily working with children that would have gone to PRUs.
Yes, yes. Yeah, no, that's interesting. First time I came across learning mentors was around Merseyside, and suddenly I was teaching all these learning mentors, and I'd never even come across it before.
I'm a paediatrician, and I'm doing mostly training now for children on the autistic spectrum and disorders.
Lovely. What geographical area do you come from?
Well, I'm based here,
But Warwickshire,
I do go
around and about. Oh,
further afield.
don't all trainers?
I just got in the summer.
Oh, really? Well, we'll talk later. Okay, well, that's actually very interesting, but also good for me to know, because my general information was it was teachers. So I'm actually glad to. Teachers are always welcome, but it's very good to see the variety of people here. Okay, so just a tiny little bit about Sleep Scotland, and then we'll get right into the sleep. And I think it's worth me saying that I know most of you know, the core facts and information on autism, and I didn't see it as my job to tell you that yet again and again. What I saw as my job is to talk about sleep, and almost everything I talk about is related to autism, because my belief is that everybody should, everybody, mainstream teachers, should be trained up to a level to deal with children on the autistic spectrum. If everybody was trained up to that level, then everybody would not only be able to do them, but they'd be far better teachers for mainstream children. So because that's my belief, and because of the project Sleep Scotland run, we run, for example, a post-school education project. We tend to develop services where there are gaps in services. And that's my belief of the way things should be done, that we should all, as many people as possible, be trained to this level, because all the techniques and the methods you use would work beautifully for everybody else. And also, because I see it as a spectrum, I don't see it as an add-on. I see it as something which is core. Okay, so a little bit about our organisation. What we feel very strongly about is that all these children with additional support needs can be helped with their sleep problems. It is not something which sometimes a doctor might tell you, because a GP is a general practitioner, not a specialist in sleep medicine and autism, that it's part of their condition and they'll either grow out of it or they won't grow out of it at all. There's nothing you can do apart from sit up all night with them. They absolutely can. They can be taught in the way they're taught anything else. And so our approach is very much a behavioural cognitive approach. Sometimes the cognitive stuff might be done with the parents rather than the children, but that's absolutely fine. So we believe through improving the sleep pattern, which we absolutely believe can be improved, then we can make an impact on not only their life, but their whole family's lives, the parents, the siblings, and of course the potential of the child. And so it's our duty to really raise awareness, not just here, but everywhere, how important sleep is. And I say people now know how important exercise is. They now know how important diet is. I'm hoping they're beginning to know how important sleep is. And we have put it on the Scottish schools agenda. We now teach teachers to teach it in mainstream schools. And it's part of our curriculum for excellence. And hopefully, in every child's review for a child with special needs, they should be asked about their sleep. Our aim is it's in every children's service plan. It isn't in everyone yet, but I have to say there are sleep counsellors now trained in every area of Scotland, but in many, many areas of the UK too. Just a little bit, that's a huge difference, obviously, from 56% to 83%. I would put those with special needs who have sleep problems as much nearer the higher figure, But it's very hard to know. A lot of things are reported as either they're physiological, they just can't sleep, or you've heard parents say, oh, I was never a very good sleeper. You come up with all sorts of things, or you don't even come up with people asking about their sleep because they're not babies anymore. And so, you know, the school gates, a lot of the discussion with parents is, did you get any sleep last night? How's your sleep? Is it improving? And once they're a certain age, is anybody going to ask that unless we make it part of the agenda? Which is why I am really, really keen to come to wider gatherings. One of our sort of core thing is to train sleep counsellors, but that's an intensive 5-day course with a day follow-up. And not everybody needs or can train to be a sleep counsellor, but I would love to train the whole world in sleep awareness. And I say that, I go each year now to Africa, to the KwaZulu-Natal area, which is Durban and the townships. And when I first went there, I part of a project called Jabulani, and we exchanged skills, which is a word which is Zulu for happiness. And I thought, they won't want to know about sleep. They've got minus everything, you know. They're lucky if they get running water, a space to sleep in is enough. But when I went there, do you know, I go back every year now and they want more and more. Autism and sleep and this. Even the street kids, workers, came in their own time to hear about how they could help the kids if they can get them in a shelter, what they can do about the sleep. And it's made me creative because you don't have baths there, you know, so you have to think about maybe substituting that for feet in hot water, and you get to, you know, you have to go back and examine your basics. But what it taught me is I left them with something they don't have to pay for. I left them with knowledge about sleep, which will help their potential, which will help them get education, which is the clue, isn't it, to progression. And so if we can do it there, we can certainly do it here. Please do, please do.
I've been around the world a fair bit.
I bet.
Previously,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, especially talk to a group of
Yeah.
parents. Autism always sleep's a big issue.
Yeah,
And I was giving a talk, workshop in the Philippines. It's
wonderful.
the only place in the world I've ever been where they didn't know what I was talking about. And of course it was a select sample. It was people who could afford to come to the workshop.
Yeah, yeah.
So I don't know whether it's general, but they're the only group who apparently didn't have any sleep problems. And I, puzzled about thinking what the only difference I could think about, and I wondered about your experience,
Mm-hmm.
was that in the Philippines they all share beds.
Interesting.
You know, even grown-up children who've gone away from the home. I'm staying in a home, a rich
Mhm.
home. Mother had 8 or 9 bedrooms. Or
But they still
and
share
some of the
beds.
grown-up children came home, so, because I was there, they came to meet me and such, and they all climbed into their mum's bed. Things that would have social services having kids. And it was just
That's interesting.
You have a great big bed, and why don't you want to sleep?
Mm.
And
Well,
I wondered if that was
yes.
all the answer.
I don't know. I know plenty of people from the Philippines now, but older people, and I've met them in other capacities, usually as carers of elderly.
Yeah.
However, I am going to ask them more now. But I suspect immediately, 2 things come to my mind. One you've already said, and the other thing is, do they expect to sleep at a certain time of night and the whole way through? Because what I've learned when I travel around the world is not everybody expects their children to go to bed at 7, 8, 9 o'clock. Many of them have a long afternoon nap and don't expect them to go to bed till much, much later. So one of my mentors was somebody called Dr. Leslie Bartlett from Southampton. Did you know him?
Yeah.
Lovely.
I know of him.
Yeah, well, we're still friends. Lovely, lovely man. And I was sort of just coming into the world of sleep as he was going out. So I had he's because he's so fascinated, he's always kept it. But I mean, there's just a little story I have to insert in there because it's amazing how things stay with you. It was the days that you photocopied articles. And he was so pleased that there was someone coming, thinking of developing a service. He'd met me the once, And he turned up with his folder of articles, huge folder, and loaned them to me. Trusted me, loaned them to me so that the knowledge will carry on. But he travelled a lot, and he used to say to me, Jane, you can't go around every country with the same apparatus. And it's true, isn't it? You have to learn about how people do things.
Travelling children.
Yeah.
And they were, just as you described, they slept when they were tired.
Yeah.
Where they were.
Yeah.
They weren't used to they
Yeah.
were going to bed.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, thank you. That's really helpful. I think we only learn from these things. So this just gives you, excuse me, an idea of the number of children and their diagnosis. But you can see how big the autistic spectrum is. And I mean, what I should probably tell you is that I developed this organisation many years ago out of my experience with my own son. My own son now, Andrew, is just, on St Andrew's Day, he was 25, which always stuns me. But because I had the challenges that all the parents have today, but I happened to be a psychologist, I put the two together, did a 3-month study that became a lifetime, of work. So this organisation very much comes from the grassroots, and hopefully we'll never quite lose that grassroots, because it's important as well. Okay, so this is what we do, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. We do workshops like this. We actually train people intensively to become sleep counsellors. I think our most popular thing at the moment is going to an area, training about 20, 25 people from the area in sleep awareness and bedtime routines, so they can do what I call level 1. And then 4, 6, 8 counsellors come and get intensively trained to the main level, and then they basically service the whole area, which is wonderful. And Emma particularly helps them develop their databases and all the core things that you need for any of these services. Our support line, which is a listening ear, and as I said, our New Sound Sleep, which I've mentioned, but everything is done in partnership with the voluntary sector and the statutory sector. I did feel when I developed this that it was only going to come through one step outside, but that it was very important to hold hands the whole journey along so that we both got the best from each other. Right, should we go with this? Little game for you all. So just agree on your tables how much sleep all these need. So you've got a cat, a dolphin, a giraffe and a bat. Okay? Who sleeps for how long? 2, 8, 13, 19 hours. Do you just want to join this table just to do the exercise so we don't put you on the spot and ask you on your own? Okay. Let's go with the room at the back. The giraffe, Emma? The giraffe, can you offer us? How long do you think a giraffe sleeps for? 8? Any? Just a matter. The same?
We thought 2 for a giraffe.
The 2. Okay. 2 hours. Okay. It's quite varied. I have to say, I have to keep checking the answers myself. Dolphin.
We thought that was the 2, so
8. 8, lots of 8s. Very good. Okay, let's.
They just float about.
I think they do, they might lie on banks, mightn't they? Some of them will lie on banks, but I'm not actually a dolphin expert. But I will go away and have a look. Because it always intrigues me that I should know a bit more. Are we up to the cat? 13 or 19. I can tell what people think about cats. 13. People obviously think cats, yes. I think that's why a lot of people have cats, because they reckon they're low maintenance and good company. And the bat is 19 hours, hanging upside down.
I want to know who measured how long ants sleep.
Right. I can't tell you all these things, but I can see by next time Emma's going to take a note in our little notebook that I'm going to try and look up a little bit more information on all these animals. I just thought it was quite good fun. Okay, now, our DVD. I think we're just going to show the first part rather than the questions. But ideally, I like to bring a parent with you, because although I'm a parent, obviously it's a long time ago for me, although usually I'm reminded before I do a conference. Usually we have a little illness or something, but no, it was perfect last night. However, Gwen, and that's her name because she's actually pleased with us using her DVD. It was her way of saying thank you. And I just think she mentally will bring you there if I haven't. Okay. As I said, I think, her words are more powerful. It's always better to, hear from the parent yourself. And as Emma said, the lovely thing is it's been a hard trek for her, because her son's, now about 25. And it's been hard, but she said at least the one thing that she's still got, even all these years later, is that. So, just to move on, you will find, you've got it open, that's excellent. You will find there is a sleep quiz in your book. What we're going to suggest now, before I tell you anything about it, about sleep, that is, that you just have a quick stab, couple of minutes, at putting the answers that you think. And then at the end, we'll give you the chance to go back and actually have a look at it. But equally, it's a quiz that you might be able to use with kids yourself to try and interest them into some of the facts of sleep. Sometimes when I teach in the schools, I end up doing the quiz with them, and through the quiz, I actually teach them so much about sleep. Okay, so let's have a look at some of these things. What is sleep? Well, it's actually natural behaviour, because we now know that every animal, even if it's only 2 hours, which is unusual, but that every animal and every human being indulges in sleep. It's how they do it and what they do with it that differs. So it's a reversible state of reduced awareness, because of course, when I sometimes talk to very young kids that are able to talk to me, they're scared of going to sleep because they don't know that they're going to wake up. And that's so understandable with kids on the autistic spectrum. So now often when we do symbols with them, we've started putting in the next morning as well to show there is something after sleep. And it's dynamic. So there is this sort of expression, sleep like a log, and it makes you think that nothing happens during sleep. And, and sometimes especially when I teach the teenagers, they have all sorts of interesting things that they say, some teasing me and some for real. But in fact, being asleep can be a very busy time. And I'm not talking about the kids that are walking the houses and raiding the kitchens. I'm talking about for the body, which is why the very first grant we got in Scotland was from the education department, because they realised how important sleep was, how important nighttime was for daytime. And so it was inextricably linked to education. So emotional well-being, physical health, we'll go a bit more into that and see what that means. But I suspect if I said to any of you, what do you feel like when you haven't had a good night? Any offers?
Like a hangover.
You feel like you have a hangover, yeah? Irritable?
Stiff and uncomfortable.
Yeah. What about 2 bad nights? 3 bad nights?
Really irritable.
Really irritable, hard to function, concentrate. Yeah, all those things.
Start to lose perspective on things.
Absolutely. And I remember hearing about the story from one of my colleagues of a disc jockey that did a television show for charity, and he was going on, it was in Southampton, like for a couple of days, and on air he started to like blur his words, he didn't make sense. The sad thing was that he never totally recovered, because he should have gone off at the beginning, you know, after a day and a night. So it actually had a long-term effect on his mental health. It's very possible that, you know, that there was some imbalance anyway. Okay, now, just very quickly, draw me a graph on what you think your sleep looks like, right? Just whatever you think. No, that's fine to say I don't know, but
Think of the axis. Say the left-hand axis would be the deep sleep and the awake, and then along the bottom line would be the number of
hours. Yeah. So if you've got number of hours, you know, from whatever, 10 o'clock to say 7 a.m. Just whatever you think. And I'm just going to have a wee look. Don't be shy, because I get all sorts of varieties when I ask this.
It's a bit small.
That's okay. And by the way, there are lots of big pieces of paper if anybody feels that artistic. Ah, interesting. Yeah. I don't think I've met two with the same yet. So you've got the depth and the hours. Not the depth, but the yeah.
Oh, it's hurting my head.
The
You don't have much
stages.
sleep, you
The
see.
stages. Stages of sleep. Right, interesting. Okay. Very interesting. Very interesting. Let's just have a look at this. Okay? So I've got some people that are doing it like this. Okay? That you go straight away into deep sleep, then you come up. I've got others, quite a few people that are going up and down, quite a lot like this. Quite a lot have this one. And I'm not sure I saw anybody with that one. Emma, which one is it?
Well, obviously it's the top
Yeah.
right-hand corner.
This is it. And why is this one it? This is it because what people don't realise is, can you see these points right at the top that happen 3, 4, 5 times during the night? That is what happens to everybody. I call it peaking. It could be just peaking, almost awake. It could be awake. So when parents come to you and say, my child wakes up during the night, what should I do? And I say, so do you. So does everyone. But it's what you do about it that matters. And of course the kids on the autistic spectrum, especially if they have learning disabilities, how are they going to know about during the night? If they wake and they don't have any clear idea that it could be morning, couldn't it? And I suggest you all, when it doesn't matter, you take away your clocks and your phones and your watches and you go to bed and you see what it's like to wake up and not know whether it's morning when you wake or night, because that's how it is for them half the time. And I always remember, like with a mother saying to me, well, look, we go to bed and he's really good about his routine, and then after a bit he gets up and he goes around the house and he's looking for something. And I say, yes, okay, and what do you do? And she says, I follow him. So can you imagine this going on a bear's hunt? She says, I follow him because I'm so trying to help him. You know, if I could find what he was looking for, then we could get back to bed. He's not looking for anything, is he? He just has no guidance that this is nighttime, and actually what she needs to do, which of course we said, you know, I explained, I don't think he's looking for anything. He just doesn't know what to do. But he does need your guidance. So you could help him by saying nighttime and bed. And in a couple of weeks, you know, we'd solved it. But you can understand how people don't see it, can't you? What happens with so many families on the autistic spectrum is they get caught up in the play. It's like a play, and you know how many people, just the other day a mother said to me, he doesn't want me near him the hour before he goes to bed, so I have to let him wander. But even if he didn't want her near him, he still needs guidance and clues. So how many of us on the autistic spectrum are wandering because people are worried that they'll have a tantrum, you know, they'll bite, they'll scratch. They think that wandering is what they need to do. A lot of the time it isn't. They are searching to be told, you know, come, why don't you come and sit down with me. Even if they get up 10 minutes later, and certainly in the bed, what they need to know is this is the bed, this is where they sleep.
Do you think it's a problem now that many parents, just for the sake of the other people in the family and for their own having little peace, have so many games and television and computers in the bedroom, so it's no longer the place where they sleep, it's a place where they play.
Totally.
So it's a confusing message.
That's totally true. And that's one big thing, particularly with our teenagers. But you're right, it's a big thing in this whole world now. And not only does it carry on stimulating them, not only do they not know their bedroom is a bedroom and not a call centre, but the light coming out of it is light that keeps them going. And Emma's become our resident expert on different types of blue light. That's what Dr. Patricia Jackson keeps telling me, Emma. Anytime she wants to check something, she rings you. But people don't realise, although interestingly enough, when I was speaking to a few teenagers about their laptop and their phones in their bed and everything, they said, it's funny. And I think you guys might recognise this. You think you'll just go and do some emails late at night, and then you think, I'm not as tired as I felt I was. I feel a bit better, I'll do a bit more. Because that light is keeping you going. What's it doing? It is stopping your melatonin being produced at the rate it would normally be produced. And that is a hormone that makes you sleepy. It's a hormone that's in your pituitary gland, or given out by the pituitary gland, and makes you sleepy. And there's a relationship, basically. I mean, that's your hypnogram. And if I just go on, to cortisol and melatonin, which are almost inversely related. One's the sleepy hormone, one's the stress hormone. And as one goes up, the other goes down, and vice versa. And obviously what you want is for the sleepy hormone to set in towards bedtime, which it will if we get the right transition between daytime and nighttime, the right sort of slow bedtime routine, and the darkness, which is a very important factor.
Isn't there some information to suggest that people with autism
Have
don't produce
less
the same levels of
melatonin.
melatonin, or at the time they need, I'm not exactly sure, you
No.
might know more than I do,
No.
or at the times they need it, or
Mm.
is
Mm.
that
There's no conclusive evidence.
right?
There's lots of things looked into melatonin. The one conclusive evidence we do have is on people with sight impairment, that they definitely have less melatonin. Sight, people who can't see as well, people who are sight impaired, they do. Now, of course, I know a lot of people on the autistic spectrum are given melatonin. We have an agreement now in Scotland, which an awful lot of paediatricians implement, which is you can have it only with a behavioural programme as well. And if I was the Queen, I would say that that's the least. Preferably a behavioural programme first, but you must have it with it, because otherwise, first of all, melatonin is only about getting someone to sleep. It's not going to keep you asleep all night. But secondly, the fact is that a lot of people might not have ever been told that in the way their child's taught during the day, they can be taught at night, and it's, and it's successful.
I think there's another thing which is happening across the thing of child development, which you touched on, is that idea of giving children guidance. And I think generally parents now, there's this idea that, oh well, they must be hungry, or they want to play with this, or they, and there's a sort of move away from saying, no, I'm your parent, I'm your carer, and I know that you need to go to sleep, or that you need to do. And I think that's across the board. So then when you have a child with behaviour difficulties, whether it's autism or not, and it's more challenging, there's sort of less permission almost for parents to feel that they can guide their child. There's more of it, well, you need to follow them round and check that they're okay, and try and help them find out what it is they're after. And and it's actually, children want boundaries.
Yeah.
They need boundaries to feel safe, secure, and that's what they're looking for. But we've become frightened of giving them to them.
I'll give you 2 wee examples, and then I'll come on to you, right? One is with a mainstream young child, when I remember when they were young, taking my niece to saying she could do whatever she wanted today. We'll do whatever you want, we'll go to Toys R Us or something, and we can buy whatever you want. And she was dumbstruck because it was too many choices, and that was just an ordinary, little mainstream girl. And as soon as I said, do you want to do this or this, she was fine. And the other one, which I might have immediately forgotten, but it'll come back to me. So you go next, and that will come back to me.
As a parent of a child with autism and severe learning difficulties, and strict guidelines and melatonin routine and the propranolol routine and the quiet bedroom, no reflection, the very strict guidelines, you don't leave the room's calm.
Right.
We go follow our son around the house. He doesn't leave his bedroom. It's
Right.
dark. We have a routine base. It's calm.
Okay.
I know sometimes there's nothing in the room. There's no game.
Okay.
There's nothing. But his body system wakes up.
Right.
And then he doesn't know where he is. So he's confused.
Yes.
And then you're thinking, right, I don't mind. I'm not going to have you on myself.
Right. What area? No.
Yes, I think
Sorry. Can I just?
we are accepting.
Yeah.
Yes,
No.
I think it doesn't take away from
No. Both are valid, but can I just say something again? I can talk to you later to find out what area you're in, what geographical area, because I'm a parent myself, right? So I developed this because of the situation, but most of our parents come and say what you're saying. But when I actually go through with them, and our first interview takes anything up to an hour and a half, because we want to know everything we need to know. And we don't give a sleep program till usually the second one after we visited the bedroom and the house. And it's not that the parents aren't working really hard. It's not that they're not doing really, really good things. But I almost always find one piece of the jigsaw that isn't in place. And I'm not even saying that every kid is going to have a sleep with, of course they're going to peak, because remember what I showed you? I showed you that, which everybody does. But A, we have improved most children's sleep patterns, and B, we have also kept them safely in their room so they are safe and the parents can get more sleep even if they wake from time to time. So I can hear what you're saying, and I'm sure you're doing lots, and I'm sure you're doing it really well. But it might be that if I sat down with you for an hour and a half going through all our proper things, I find the one piece of the jigsaw.
I'm pretty sure there are a couple of things I'm already aware of.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
he
yeah.
he has an old mattress he's
Yeah.
borrowed off his sister, and it's very bouncy, and he's very sensorily driven. So I
Yeah.
reckon he also wakes up and thinks, oh, boingy, boingy.
Well,
Let's
there,
bounce.
there we are.
Sort of thing, is it?
No, absolutely. And I'm probably not in a position in the small time they've given me, nor would it be a service to you to discuss that in detail here with everybody. However, what I will try and do is see if I can find somebody who's trained to work with you.
Just think sometimes
Yeah,
balance.
yeah.
And certainly in my experience, people who get increasingly anxious and cortisol levels rise, that seems to be a big disruptor. I think we need to work on both aspects. of it.
Absolutely.
That's the new research that's probably being referred to as well, that actually it's not necessarily about the melatonin levels, it's more about the cortisol levels.
Yeah,
And obviously
absolutely.
children with autism might have much higher levels of anxiety,
Yeah.
and therefore they've got higher
Yes.
levels of cortisol.
Yes. And I think we know they do, but of course they do even more if they don't know what they're doing, you know. And of course it is. And that's why when we wake in the early hours of the morning, whatever is stressing us out is 20 times worse than when we gather ourselves during the daylight and we feel, you know, a bit saner. And then it's the same thing, but it doesn't feel quite as bad.
We don't use what we've learned about insomnia in general. We don't seem to apply it to autism. You know, we're anxious and we're worried about something. Often, you know, all of us will have periods of insomnia.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Disturbed sleep. But, you know, there are strategies for helping you calm down. You don't always implement them, but they exist. But we seem to sort of, you know, put out the window when it comes to autism.
Yes, and we've got to remember, if we end up helping somebody without meaning to bring the cortisol levels into play earlier than they should do, then of course this is happening. But there are plenty of things. I mean, I only say it because it's a tried and tested techniques that we've worked for years. So why shouldn't parents benefit? I never meant to develop UK or nationwide sleep service. I never went into it with that aim. I just did a sample, and it was a 3-month study, and my son was a sample, you know. But people should have it. If it exists, they should know it. Okay, so we've talked about the circadian rhythm. Everybody has a rhythm. Even the animals we see have a rhythm, and this is just explaining again the different levels of cortisol. Also, if you find out what you naturally are better at different times, that's how they're using education. You know, when should we teach them maths? When's a good time to teach them maths? When's a good time to teach them, you know, to do sports? All that knowledge is really helpful to us. Okay, and where and what is our body clock? So we all have body clocks, and we have things called Zeitgebers, which is light, temperatures, activities, which helps us know what to do when. Now, we're all well versed in that in the daytime, but we are not necessarily well versed in that in nighttime. And of course, if you're tired and you're working with a child that needs extra, you know, all the time and during the day, and you have just put your head down on the pillow, unless you have an agreement with yourself written out, you won't necessarily do the thing that you know you should do. And I say it myself. I came into it, and I know what it's like to just want to get an extra 5 minutes sleep. But what we need to do is work out what's the best thing long term. Otherwise, we have parents using endless amounts of energy going round in circles when they don't need to. And that's my determination to get this knowledge around. And just to sort of say about the jet lag effect, because we do, I mean, children on the autistic spectrum must be in and out of jet lag effects all the time if they, you know, have sleep challenges. Because the jet lag effect, we particularly pick on like teenagers who might party all weekend, and then they have to get up on a Monday morning, and that is the same as traveling to America for them. Now, we know about jet lag for America. That's where melatonin started off, with looking at, you know, helping with jet lag. But we don't realize that a lot of kids on the autistic spectrum are going through this all the time. And again, we need to apply the methods we use during the day to nighttime as well. You can teach somebody how to improve their sleep. I probably don't want to spend too much time on this, but just you can see here, this is the body And in our body, there's a hormone of cocktails released during sleep. We're strengthening our bones, we're boosting the immune system. So how many times do people say, I'm really tired and I think I've got flu coming on, and they have an hour's sleep just to get through the day, and then they actually say, I feel much better. My son's brilliant about knowing his own body, and he has a lot of complex medical issues and has had a number of mini strokes. And sometimes it's just he gets something where it's sort of hemiplegic migraine, where the arm stops moving and the leg stops moving, and he shuts down and he will just sleep, just even on the couch or whatever. He knows what he needs, and then he will wake up again, and often it will come back and he'll be fine and he'll be back in the world again. You know, and it's miraculous. It's miraculous, the properties of sleep. It really, really is. And of course, the memory consolidation, the vocab, the pronunciation. There are all these little areas of our brain, and they all do different things, and they also work through the night. There are different parts where different parts are working on different things. But if our children aren't having those different stages of sleep, which is sometimes what drugs might interfere with, then they're not going through all the stages that they need. So and we don't know exactly sometimes, you know, whether a particular drug just misses out a whole stage of sleep. And that's one of the challenges. So when I say why are children with additional support needs more likely to have sleep problems, you probably know now by the way I talk that means all those on the autistic spectrum, because they are our best teachers. As I said, you learn about them, you learn about everything else at the same time. So if you think about it, sometimes they do have respiratory problems, those with Down syndrome sometimes sit up to sleep because it's quite hard for them to breathe. If you think about the communication disorders, and speaking properly to people, I once, in my early days of my son being at school, went to a little session by a speech therapist, and she started teaching us Russian. And we were okay on the first word, and we were okay on the second word. We were getting not okay on the third word, and by the time we did a sentence, we were lost. And I've always remembered that, because I'm thinking, this is what it's like most of the time for those on the autistic spectrum. And then we don't even repeat the same thing, we change it, because we think, oh, they haven't understood, so I'll change what I say. You know, how much more difficult are we making it for them? So in everything, we need to be very clear and consistent. And it's very hard for tired parents to be very clear and consistent. A lot of the kids, they'll tell me they're hyperactive. They'll tell me they don't need this amount of sleep, Jane. I never did, or my partner never did, or his grandfather never did. You know, they don't need that amount of sleep, or they're bouncing and talking to their imaginary friends. This is overdrive. This is not tired. They have missed the time when they were slightly tired because they were too afraid to try and start the bedtime routine because they wanted them flat out and exhausted, because that was the only confidence they had that they would go to sleep. So they missed the first time. Sometimes they missed the second time. Sorry, did you want to say? No. But you recognise it. And so then they've got a child who's absolutely on overdrive. Okay. Yeah.
I'm just wondering, we're going to take about 25 minutes, so you might want to miss this activity.
Yeah. So, okay, thanks, Emma. So what I'm going to do, I'm not going to do the activity that goes with this, but you can all do it yourself, you know, at any other time, because we've got a few activities, and this was sort of an extra one. But just because I knew some people at least would be related to education, but project workers or whatever, you probably recognise an ABC chart, yeah? I always deal with ABC charts by starting with the consequences. That's my way of doing them. Because I always say, if there aren't consequences, then you don't need to deal with it. There are plenty of people, you know, how many times are you at a party and you hear someone giving someone else advice and you think, keep out of it, Jane, they haven't asked you, they don't know who you are, and you're having a drink at a social occasion, don't worry yourself, even though you think that advice is so bad. However, if things aren't overbalanced, then you don't know about them and there isn't a problem. But why we know about the sleep is because the children are falling asleep at school, their siblings are falling asleep, they're not using all their potential, the parents are totally sleep deprived, often it's a single parent on their own. So I encourage people to do an ABC where they have a look, they know what behaviour is causing the consequences, they only know about it, the behaviour, because of the consequences, and then they go back and look at the antecedents. And when I train sleep counsellors, I train them to do that first before I go on to the behavioural and cognitive techniques. Okay, shall we have a quick look at this? Right, a bedroom. It's probably a teenage bedroom, but these days it could be anybody's bedroom. Any ideas what we should do with this bedroom? Is this a good place to fall asleep? What would you do? Yeah.
Get rid of all the electronic devices.
Yeah.
If you can't put them in another room, you need at least to.
Put a blanket over them.
Screen.
Completely. Do you know the number of houses I've been to? And I am not criticising, I am just feel for the parents because it's so much harder than making it for themselves, where the television, all the kiddie has to do is go like that, you know, because they'll say, oh, it helps us during the night get some sleep. I think, you know, with autism, the thing to do is not make something possible that you don't want, because to them, it's teasing them. If it's a locked door, they will try it 2 or 3 times and then they won't try it anymore. They might have a tantrum that time, but eventually, if you make something routine, you reinforce it with lots of praise, they will stop doing that. The thing that you always should do is put something in its place. So you think that you're always giving the child something rather than taking it away. But parents are terrified to do these things because they're terrified of the tantrums, and especially if you've got a child. I mean, one of the more difficult things is if a child smears or injures themselves. So it's very important for us as sleep counsellors to make sure that everything's safe in anything we're going to implement. Okay, yeah, telephone, they couldn't, it's obviously dated, isn't it? But I quite liked it dated. I mean, I think the classic was when we were doing a radio programme and we went into a bedroom. It was teenagers, and there was 2 or 3 people in that bedroom, and they were all on computers talking to other people over the net, not even each other. So you're right. It doesn't matter if you don't have space. Put a blanket over it, put it away under the bed, do, you know, whatever. Have a television on wheels, but also try not to use the bedroom as a call centre or a play centre. And if it's a small house, do it, but have a space in between nighttime and daytime. One of the main things that the rest of the bedtime routines and everything is based on is having a transition for the body between daytime and nighttime.
Some parents are worried about, or say, the child doesn't like dark.
Yeah.
But my experience is that if the child's frightened, it's usually about shadows. And if you make it really dark,
I would agree.
blackout curtains,
Yeah.
then actually they cope with it quite well.
Yeah.
As long as they know how to turn on the lights.
Yeah. I would agree completely, but what I often do on that is get them to put a dimmer, you know, and slowly. So most things we do, people have the choice of how they do a program, but most people choose to do something in a graduated way. So that's the other way to do it. But I completely agree. It's the shadows rather than the darkness every time for the ones I know. Okay. Emma, you've got a nice activity for people now. Right, let's get a bit of feedback. Say we start from tea time, okay? So do you want, who started it from tea time onwards? Okay, who started it from literally the bedtime routine? Most of you, yeah? Yeah? Okay. Do you want to tell me what your first couple of board maker symbols are?
We've done it from some sort of activity prior to.
Fine. Yeah, no, go ahead.
We've done some sort of activities. We're just saying if your child's got ADHD or
Mhm.
they're sensory,
Mhm.
then sometimes they need to do the old trampolining to get that,
Okay.
to get the activity out. I appreciate that's not the sort of thing you necessarily want before the bed. You want
Okay.
to calm, but for my son's sake,
Right.
he's going to be doing bouncing or
Right.
something to get
So that's an excellent activity that we put before the hour before bed. We put it earlier. It would be great for them to swim, to trampoline, anything physical, but to make it so that it's not the hour before they go to bed. And lots of them like trampolining, and it's, like I say, it's very, very good. And so if, again, they're bouncers, you can do anything from putting a mattress on the floor so it doesn't bounce to having, a memory foam bed so that they don't get the feedback, because bouncing gives you the feedback all the time. But to do a physical activity a little bit earlier is highly desirable. So, okay, so the activity. Now, the next, do you want to tell me a couple of your next board maker symbols? Yeah?
Yeah, we did an activity and then we did number 3.
Do you want to just speak up a wee bit?
We did an activity similar to that, and then we did food, and then an activity, and then bath.
Okay, let's stop there because that's fine. So we call it often in Scotland supper, snack. So that's good, and they have that still downstairs or in the rooms, that they eat in, and you have to think about what you're giving them. Is it something that they're going to digest easily? Is it maybe a little warm milk that gets melatonin going as well? Not too much that they're going to have more energy, and not something that's hard to digest, maybe like cheese or meat or something like that. Okay. Do you want to take it from there?
We did sort of quieter activities then, like a puzzle story.
Yeah, and that's the activities that you should have before, I don't want to give it away, before, but I can't think of any other way of saying it, before you go to the bathroom. So the last sort of activities you want is the hand-eye coordination, quiet type of activities. Okay.
We've got to sort of have a bath, do brushing of teeth in the toilet, and then into the pyjamas.
Right, perfect. Now, it's quite interesting because most people had a bath here, but I usually get challenges about my child prefers to shower or the bath's too stimulating or something. Now, I'm not interested in the bath to keep them clean. It's very nice to keep them clean, but that isn't my point. I don't know of a better passive transition from daytime to nighttime than bathing, and I'm really sorry that some of the councils are just taking out the baths and putting in wet rooms, because a shower, you speak to an OT, right? A shower stimulates all the different parts of your body and your skin, and a bath does the opposite. And if there's too much water or there's too many children in it, so you change how you do the bath rather than take it away. You can tell I should really be paid by the bath companies, because I am such a believer in a bath. I mean, I love having a bath. You feel like, you're the princess or the prince or whatever. So I'm very, very keen on that. So after the bath?
We You've then got pyjamas, toilet, bedtime.
Yeah, pyjamas, toilet, bedtime. So one of the things, and I think I actually got it from everybody here, is that they move straight on from the bath. There's no going downstairs for a snack. There's nothing about the past, the back, you know, I say downstairs if it's an upstairs, downstairs, flat or house, but if not, basically the rooms you use during the day are a memory, a distant memory. Because all the time with children with autism, they learn by association, don't they? So they've got to associate the bathroom with the next stage being the bedroom. We use the board maker symbols, we use associations, we use things for them to feel. You know, you could bring them the bath towel down so that they know they're going to the bath. You'd bring them a little pillow to, you know, to remind them of their bedroom. A number of people asked me about books. Now, some kids, I mean, the ideal thing, you know, if you look at a baby's sort of nighttime schedule is to have a story. But some kids on the autistic spectrum would not take one story. So it's better to have no stories. Now, I'm not telling you not to have any stories. I'm saying you have to see how the child is. But if endings of stories are a difficulty, it's probably better not to have any. They'd probably accept that more than they would trying to end it. But when you're going from story to story or saying goodnight to this animal and that animal or this brick and that brick, and it's endless, remember that's the difficulties. Their difficulties are beginning, ending and changing.
How about music?
Okay, that's a really good one. And I'm very for music. I would not, I'd have music, I'd probably have it after the bath, or sorry, during the bath. Ideally, you don't really want to have anything that they're going to sleep with that they're not going to wake up with. Because here's a really sort of crude example. You know the number of parents that, out of desperation, let them fall asleep on the sofa watching the telly because they're desperate. So the kid gets carried up and then they're in bed, they wake up and the parent isn't there and the telly isn't there and they don't know where they are. So ideally, you'd want them to go to bed. The ideal for all of us, not just kids on the autistic spectrum, is that you go to sleep on your own and you wake up on your own and you don't expect to call on anyone else.
You know how children with autism are often alert to just tiny little noises.
Of course.
Like the fridge turning on. And
Yes, I do.
heating adjusting.
I do.
So I've often recommended to parents that they have a masking noise, like a fan.
It's a very good idea.
Do you
Yeah.
agree with that?
I do. What I say to parents is, do not try and make your house silent because it won't be silent. And if you try, you know, so many parents say to me, I was doing so well, I sat with them, you know, holding their hand, which is not actually good news because you're not going to be there holding their hand when they wake up. And then the wooden plank made a noise. And I say, you need to walk out normally while they're still awake. Gradually, I mean, we take parents very, very gradually. But so it's the same theory. If the milkman, and I don't know about here in England, but in Scotland, they actually come at like 1 o'clock in the morning or midnight. They don't actually come in the early morning. So we have agreements with them now. Because what you don't want is a sudden noise. But if you have no noises in the house or you try, it isn't a state that you're going to be able to do. So a masking noise, you know, is a good one too. So you can see what we've got. And most people were pretty close to that because obviously you understand the reasoning behind it. I haven't mentioned naps, and it's just that it's not my calculation, but if you have a nap after 2 o'clock, then you can probably say that the bedtime, any hour after that, you'll be 2 hours later going to bed. So you need to think about that. The obvious think about is the transport home from school. But include the people who do the transport, include the other kids, you know, get one to read to them, get them to sing, you know, because that's the fatal one. No TV, iPads, consoles, etc. We say an hour before bed. Again, I'm talking to the people who are coming to us because they have difficulties. I'm not telling the world, you know, unless they ask us. We talked about that. Sweets, fizzy drinks. I am a real believer. You are what you eat. You know, in the 60s and 70s, it was a lot of talking about you are what you eat. And I see kids visibly transformed in front of my eyes through having just a little sip of something that we have in Scotland called Iron Brew. How could I forget? Yeah. I just think, why make somebody who has challenging behaviour anyway have more difficulty? It is not a treat. It is harder for them. Don't give them out. They don't need to. They can love fruit, really. You know, I've now raised a son that loves berries. You know, I'm not saying he wouldn't like a chocolate, but he doesn't miss them. And that's a wonderful thing about autism, that basically, if it's there, it's there. And if it's not, it's not. Okay, and basically, our bedtime routine is starts not more usually than 1 hour before they're going to bed. We've talked about most of these, so I'm just really summarising it. The importance of falling asleep alone. Now, we might do that very gradually because our parents might be in bed with the child, or they might be in their bed. So one of the essential ingredients to a sleep program is that the child owns their own bed. Because it's like baking a cake without eggs and flour, you can't. So you can't do a sleep program unless they realise they have a bed and a bedroom. And then you do everything gradually from there. It's got to be consistent bedtime. You will be going through a transition period. I'm not trying to teach you to be sleep counsellors. I couldn't possibly teach you a 5-day course. I just want you to be aware enough, and so that you've got an idea about sleep hygiene and bedtime routines. And if any of you really feel you're in a position to train further, then Emma and I'll be delighted to give you a leaflet and talk to you about it. We've talked about the stories, we've talked about the bath, we've talked about the lights, the same order each night. And if praise in the morning, if the morning is not related to the night before, which happens with some kids, I don't know, maybe other people do this, but what I started doing is putting positive reinforcement before. So you're such a good boy to go to bed. Because afterwards, hopefully they're asleep, you know, but certainly the morning, they don't relate to the night before. For those that do, by all means, do positive reinforcement, but I am not a believer in buying things. I don't want people to be rewarded with presents all the time. A really, you know, anything from a happy person's, you know, smiley face chart or whatever television program they like in a chart, to a reinforcing voice. Most of the kids on the autistic spectrum really respond well to warmth and positive reinforcement, and they hate anger and shouting. It's just the things that we actually hate, isn't it? Sure, I'm almost at the end. No, go ahead.
I just wondered about children who wake up when they actually need to go to the toilet. Because I've had a terrible experience of my bad practice. I was looking after a young man, his family having a wedding, his sister was getting married, you know, he was quite difficult. And anyway, before he got into bed, we had the routine, and I gave him a picture of what the alarm clock would look like when he was allowed to get up.
Mm-hmm.
Stressed, you know, mustn't stay in his bed and sleep until this time. He was staying in my son's room, which my son's never forgiven me for. And of course, my fault entirely. He obviously in the night wanted to go to the toilet. I'd forbidden him from getting up. So he got up and he smeared it everywhere.
Yeah.
Every
Yeah.
So it's kind of building that in.
Okay, but even better than that, because of course smearing, I just said earlier on, is one of the more difficult things. I try and encourage people to maybe use Movicol to change the time that they go to the toilet. Do people know about Movicol? I feel like I'm again commissioner, but it's almost pure stuff. It works really on the amount of water. It's powder, but you put the powder into water, and it's the water that actually does it. And you can actually, if you give it in the morning, you've got every chance of the child going quite early during the day, so they will have emptied their bowels by the evening, so you don't even have to deal with that. But if you do have to deal with that, so that means you don't have to pad the walls, you know, you don't have to do all that, because you just change the time, and then eventually their body will do it anyway. But if some children do need to go to the toilet, generally you would hope not more than once, but you can walk them there and back, or carry them there and back, and they just fit it as part of their routine. Does all that make sense?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Just think about the child who's more independent, as it were, so you wouldn't be taking them necessarily.
No, but they
the child who wakes up and wants to go. They've got to know where to go.
Yes, and they can go. What you might need to do is you might need to take them back again.
Yes.
So they can go themselves, but you probably have to take them back again. Otherwise, and I know a number that do this, they will be there pulling the chain endlessly. I think that's them telling me we're nearly there. We've been through all this, and this is very much what's called sleep hygiene, making the room right, making the temperature comfortable. Don't suffocate them. It's actually not such. You go to sleep at a reasonably cool temperature. Talked about the electronic equipment. So the crucial elements of a good sleep program: clear message, consistency, positive reinforcement, the timing right, and of course, diet. And sleep hygiene is everything we've been talking about. What I do, obviously, on a full course is I go into all the strategies. I've talked about them with you, but I go obviously into great depth on behavioural strategies. We talk about Carol Gray's social stories, the visual supports, which I've introduced you to, a bit more about motivators. Where possible, we involve the child, relaxation techniques and diets. You know, I do a PowerPoint at least on every one of these, but all I wanted to say to you is these would be the sort of strategies you would talk about on, say, day 4 of a sleep counsellor's course. Emma, do you want to do the last little bit? Yeah. So if you get out, because I've had all my Zeitgebers back at the here of I need to finish now, you see. Otherwise, how would I know? Because I'm hopeless at keeping timing and looking at watches. When I talk, I get so engrossed that even though there's a little clock there, if somebody didn't appear and I didn't, you know, every so often, you know, scratch her ear, I would completely forget. So,
Very quickly.
and then with your permission, I just want to take any burning questions afterwards.
So if you're looking to mark it, first one, shall I just give you the answers due to time? So I'm just going to give them the answers.
That's fine.
So thumbs down is the red thumbs down, and then the other one's thumbs up.
If we were really nasty, we'd make you mark each other's, but we won't.
So you can see how you've done.
But what you should really do when you come out of here tonight is redo it and see if you get most of them right. And then I'll have done a good workshop.
Is anybody surprised at any of the answers?
I thought you did need less as you got older. When
Yeah,
you're
I
talking about
did as
older,
well.
Yeah, not much. You know, teenagers need 9 1/4 because so much is going on with them. Most of us need between 7 and 8. Older people will tell you they wake all the time. Not that they need less, but that A, they're dozing lots during the day, a lot of older people, and B, they're on a lot of medication. So there's all sorts of things going on. And I have to say, especially when I go into homes, I'm not too chuffed with the way the bedroom's sort of used, because people are going to bed at like 6:30, and if anybody's got a problem, then they go to bed even earlier. I'm not saying every home, but...
Stimulation too.
And it's totally... stimulation is everything, isn't it? Which is, I think, why Sleep Scotland set up something called Teens Plus for post-school education, because we believe that we needed lifelong education, and people, it would be wasting their wonderful education at school if we didn't go past that.
I'm just surprised the answers to 6 and 8. Depends on the kind of snoring, but if you've got at all sleep apnea.
Yeah, there's a difference between, and you're quite right, and I think we probably should correct that, because snoring, you might not have sleep apnea, and then it doesn't make any difference. But if you have sleep apnea, which is one of the signs of it, one of a number of signs of it, then it does affect your sleep, and you usually pick up on that because people start falling asleep during the day.
Children who snoring usually have some upper respiratory obstruction.
Yes.
Even if they're not got sleep apnea.
Well, and they often do, and they often do have a respiratory thing, which is also why in our sleep counselling courses, the first couple of days is taken by a paediatrician looking at the physiology of sleep, not to turn you into paediatricians and diagnosticians, but so you really understand the contents of what you're talking about. Was there anything else?
No, I was about to say,
Yeah.
just to say that it is,
Yeah.
snoring is, it's not necessarily sleep apnea, but there's possibly a concern there.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, yeah.
Lack of sleep will make you tired, but will not affect aspects of your health. And
Yeah,
it
has that
does
got a
affect the
thumbs
aspect of your
down?
health. I think that's negative, isn't it?
Yeah.
It should be.
I think that's back to front.
Where is it?
Yeah, it's number 8.
Lack of sleep will make you tired.
It does
but
affect
not
lots
Yes, it does affect.
Oh,
Yes.
change that to your answer.
Yeah,
then.
change it. Thank you very much. I think in every other session it's gone the opposite.
Right.
So it's something's just slipped round. Well done. It's the catch one. Can I just throw it open at this stage, just in case there are other burning issues, because I don't want to leave without. Yeah.
I don't think it would take too long to answer. If children have developed, if a person as a child has developed a reversed sleep pattern, like they're asleep
Daytime and nighttime, yeah.
Daytime
Which teenagers often
Yeah.
do, yeah.
if that's happening in an adult still, if it's persisted,
Mm-hmm.
is it possible to change it, or is that an
No, it is possible to change it. The longer something's gone on, the longer it might take to change it. And there are various ways of changing. It's a delayed sleep phase, but a very, very delayed sleep phase. So I wouldn't want to give an instruction to you in 5 minutes, because it could be, sometimes we do a very drastic thing if they are so out of sync, where we work them backwards to their sleep pattern. But it's something that needs very careful monitoring. But anybody can have an improved sleep pattern. It just might take longer the longer you've been in bad practice or a difficult routine. I think that's what's probably important to say.
Talked about children not having enough sleep. What is the average amount of hours a child should have overnight?
Right. Well, it does depend on the age, and we've got a chart, and we could put up the chart. The reason that I'm a bit against the charts, especially those with special needs, my opinion is they always need more than the average, not less. So, as you become an adult, it's 8. In teenagers, it's 9 1/4, and then depending on the age, it could, it starts off a lot more than that. But I know those who are in their 20s with special needs that are still going to bed, 9:30, 9:45, getting up at, 7:30, and they need that. So I'm a bit careful of giving numbers that don't fit all, if that's all right. But I could tell you that they probably need at least, 9.5 or something. The way of diagnosing it really is by seeing how they're functioning during the day. And if you feel that somebody is tired, is different on different days, anything like that, that's your way really to trace it backwards. Okay. Yeah.
This is kind of related to that. Would you change the routine of a teenager with ASD, kind of after you've established a pattern already when they're younger?
You mean, do you,
Teenagers
yeah.
actually change their pattern.
Yeah.
My son used to get up at
Yes, yes. So what you've hit on is that the physiology of a teenager changes. Their melatonin is produced later. However, if they are going to have to exist in the real world, we have to come to a compromise. So yes, they might go to bed late, but that's why we try and work with teenagers, any that are able to actually work with us. And certainly in mainstream, we address it as a peer culture. It has to be that way because that's who they look at. But I would change it, for example, even when you're going on holiday, if somebody's so well established in a routine, but in the holidays you can change it by an hour. You do the same routine, but you may have it an hour later. Teenagers will be a bit later, but if you let them go with that, they can't function in the real world, can they?
Yeah. But like say the weekends or something, because they do tend to, like I say, tends to lie in now, because you wouldn't have them when he was
Yes.
6 or 7.
But even if they lie in, if they get up in the afternoon every day in the weekend, then you're going to have a jet lag problem on Monday morning.
But I mean within reason, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the other thing is you don't catch up. You don't literally like store your sleep at the weekend.
Yeah.
But with teenagers, I tell them, and they are really interested. When they realise how it affects their daytime and everything, their grades, their beauty, everything else, makes a big difference.
Maggie Thatcher didn't do us any favours, did she?
Not
3
really.
hours sleep.
Not in many ways, I'm afraid. Maybe last one I'm being told, yeah.
Have you got any tips for a 15-year-old young man who doesn't see the point in sleeping? Apart from educating him, obviously, we've tried that, but he thinks it's boring and he's not tired, so why should he go to sleep?
Well, it would be wrong of me. First of all, I don't give tips. I only give strategies and programs because that's what I know works. Whereas if I give a tip, it's like giving 2 pieces of a jigsaw when we haven't done the rest of it. So I don't know anything about your young man. I don't know whether they've got learning difficulties. He's got ADHD. I don't know anything about what he does during the day. I would start on the daytime. I would make sure that he has a good daytime program. Then I would start addressing the nighttime, and I would find what motivates him, and I would then teach him about sleep through what motivates him. I can give you the general thing. I can't give you the specific because I don't know your young man.
Have you ever come across that? Have you heard of that before?
All the time. Lots. It's the world of teenagers, which is why we have developed a handbook, Sound Sleep, and we've developed a one-day course to teach teachers to teach in schools because it is so abundant, all the things you're saying.
You said he had ADHD, he had Asperger's as well, or just ADHD?
No, just ADHD.
Yeah. The other thing I can tell you, which might not be the case with this young man, is one of the things I did when I ran a pilot clinic for teenagers is I actually found not everybody who was presented with ADHD had ADHD. They had sleep deprivation. Not all, but some only had sleep deprivation. I think this is probably the point that I need to stop. Emma and I'll be here though, and we're around if anybody wants to ask us anything. We'd be delighted.